My name is Stephen Middleton. Throughout my production of documentary films in Kentucky, I have chronicled lesser-known locales, an epic battle over a rock, and the strange and curious. While producing Commonwealth Curiosities, I worked with and befriended Cory Ramsey of Map.Kentucky. Who is Cory Ramsey and Map.Kentucky? That answer is both unique and fascinating. Since 2010, Cory Ramsey has gone to all 120 counties in Kentucky twice. As he traveled through small towns, state parks, and forgotten communities, he began to document his adventures, leading to the birth of Map.Kentucky. Map. Is a true Commonwealth gem, searching out and preserving all the unique aspects of our great state. This is the story of Map.Kentucky and what Cory Ramsey and his crew have done to preserve the past and keep an eye to the future of what our great Commonwealth of Kentucky has to offer.
Well, Map. Kind of got started with something called the layoff hikes, and those occurred in 2009. I was working at an automotive facility in Bowling Green, and we had a 2-month layoff because back then the auto industry, we didn't know if it was going to, survive past 2009. So had the 2-month layoff, didn't have anything else to do, and I started going on hiking trips to some state parks in Kentucky. And I went on probably 150, 200 hiking trips, and was the first adventure tourism blogger for the state of Kentucky, getoutkentucky.com. And I wrote for them for a few years. Kentucky Living magazine caught wind of what I was doing through Get Out Kentucky, through adventure tourism. They featured me in their magazine, I think 4 or 5 times, put me on the cover of the thing in 2013. KET caught wind of Kentucky Living magazine because I was on the cover of the thing, 1 million subscribers. And they said, hey, would you like to come on this show, Kentucky Life, with Dave Shuffett, who had been there like 20-some years, And I said, yeah, I grew up watching Dave Shuffett on Kentucky Afield and Kentucky Live. He's a hero of mine. I'd love to be able to be featured with him. And so we got on KET, and then that turned into kind of saying, hey, there's more to be done here, not just the outdoors, not just hiking areas, but how about places in Kentucky? How about every place in Kentucky? And so I began to think, what can I do to highlight rural areas? I'm from Hickman, Kentucky, Fulton County, down in the rural western part of the state, the Jackson Purchase area. It's as far west as you can go. And those folks down there don't quite get the same amount of attention as some folks closer to what they call the Golden Triangle in Kentucky, say Lexington or Louisville or Covington up near Cincinnati. That kind of area in there gets an awful lot of attention. And sometimes the eastern Kentucky, as we all know, doesn't get quite the same amount of attention. What about the western part of the state? What about the northern part of the state up around Flemingsburg? Those places, and even sometimes the areas between Bowling Green and Land Between the Lakes, those spots. So I wanted to go out on the road, see what was out there first of all, get off the parkways and interstates, go to these backwood locations, go to the dots on the map, hence the name Map.Kentucky, kind of a play on words to say this is kind of a representation of your town, my town, our small place in Kentucky, and highlight those spots. And so I gathered a crew with me to travel. Travis Norton, who had been with me for some time there, dating back to even the outdoorsman Cory Ramsey days. We met at the radio station here in town. And then Talia Butler, who I met with the Bowling Green Convention and Visitors Bureau. She was hanging around with them. And then Kelly Short later got married, Kelly Reynolds, and she was working at the Barren River Lake State Resort Park, and met her. And then met a newspaper writer named Monica Spees, and now she's Monica Ramsey because we got married. But all of us as a troop gather into a car, and we travel down the road, and we look for a dot on the map. Sometimes we just plop out a map and point to a place. And sometimes it's like throwing a dart at a dartboard. We just go to this place, we pull up there, we take a picture. If there's a burger to be had, we have it. If there's a cold drink, if there's a soft drink to have, we have it. And we just have a good time, and then we talk about this place.
Cory Ramsey and I met in the summer of 2015. I was producing Commonwealth Curiosities Volume 2 and found what he and his crew were doing to be very unique. I myself was attempting to document small-town Kentucky. I found out very quickly that Cory and the Map. Crew had already been to all 120 counties twice and had been featured in every Kentucky publication, magazine, and on television. I sat down with Cory's crew at the Boyce General Store on a typical hot Kentucky summer day while the crew was being photographed for a Kentucky Living article.
It was about the time I met you two, I guess, was 2013.
Mm-hmm.
And you were after I had a trip to Tompkinsville for Dovey Burgers.
Yes, that's right.
And stopped where you were at.
Yep. Good old Dovey.
Yeah. At the, that was at Barren River Lake.
Yes. River Lake's Park.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Were your stomping grounds.
Yep, my stomping grounds.
Yeah.
For sure.
But
Sure am.
and I guess Talia came along about the same time there through the Convention Visitors Bureau, but we took some trips together.
Yeah, I remember Hard Scratch.
Hard Scratch.
Hard Scratch Country Store, breakfast, going to Subtle to take a photo just because it was subtle.
Subtle. That was the trip where we were going to go down there and meet a feller for an article. And I think he forgot about us for a little while, and we forgot about him for a little while, and missed him because we were so busy on the way to Subtle. Yeah, Hard Scratch.
So why is it a state with 120 counties gets so little attention outside of its major cities? From small townships to even tinier towns, Kentucky from east to west is a very amazing state. But to understand what Map. Kentucky is, you need to have an understanding of what it is like to grow up in a small town. Out of all 120 counties in the great Commonwealth of Kentucky, the heart and spirit of our state exists in the frames of rural counties, people, and small townships. Areas where people still remember what it's like to walk down Main Street. They remember the old movie theater, the biggest ice cream cone in town, and stopping at their favorite country store. To understand Map. You need to understand where Cory Ramsey came from, a little town in Kentucky with a rich history. I rode with Cory and Monica to Cory's hometown of Hickman to get a better understanding.
Well, we're at what used to be 1803 Moscow Avenue in Hickman. I guess it still is. It was also known as Route 4 when I was growing up. This is rural Route 4, and there was a house right here. This is where I grew up. There was a 2-bedroom house. My parents later added on a 3rd bedroom. It had a wraparound porch and a swing, and we used to sit out here and wave at cars when they drove by, and it had a bug zapper light on the front porch that would, you'd sit there and it'd Well, here in Hickman, the Fulton County schools have had basically the same campus as long as I can remember. They used to meet up on the hill. They called it College Hill. There used to be a college here in town, and so they would meet up there for some school classes. The high school was up there for years, the elementary school. And so I was able to attend school right here at the elementary school through the mid-'80s there and into the early 90s at the middle school, and in the late 90s, graduating in 99 here at the high school. So the high school had about 300 in it, grades 7 through 12, because the 7th and 8th grade was in there too. And when I graduated, 36 in the graduating class. So, of course, my influences coming from a small town would be coming from Fulton County, Hickman, Kentucky, small place, 2,000 people. Not a whole lot there, but what is there, the folks love. And there's good people down there. And I wanted folks to know that not only do places like Hickman matter, but places like our hometowns matter and the places where we come from.
Cory and the Map. Crew have always gotten their fair share of media attention in Kentucky. From Kentucky Educational Television, Kentucky Living Magazine, Kentucky Tourism, and once, yes, even hanging out with Western Kentucky University's famous mascot, Big Red.
MapDOT is far-reaching, and when you pull up to a place, they all have stories. With Western, there's so much history in the 100-plus years of this place.
Who better than Big Red to get a unique MapDOT tour of WKU's campus?
All right, Big Red, our first stop is Jonesville. This is right at the corner of Russellville Road and US 68. This is an old community right here. This is an old MapDOT. We are standing where there were.
I think the important part of what the Map. Crew is doing is that they are highlighting these towns that have gotten forgotten over generations. 3, 4, 5 generations ago, these types of places like Boyce was the only place to go to. Well, there wasn't big box stores. There wasn't a lot of things in town, so you stuck to your community. And with the inventions of Walmarts and Kroger's, places like us have died. I enjoy the most about what MapDOT is doing is that they're continuing to show that these places exist and that there are things that you need to see out here, places you need to experience, and these are in places like us, they're few and far between, but people need to know that we're still here.
I joined the MapDOT crew somewhere around 2013-ish. I was working at the Bowling Green Convention and Visitors Bureau Tourism Office, and that's how I met Cory and his ragtag crew, and they invited me to join several of their trips, and I just fell in love with it and had a wonderful time.
Been with MapDOT since 2011. Cory and I started hiking back in those days. It was kind of pre-MapDOT. A few of my favorite trips that we've been on have been going down to Hog-Eye, which is down in Simpson County. There's not much there. There's a little sign that says Hog-Eye. And that's what MapDOT is. It's finding those small towns and finding out that little landmark that is in that little city.
MapDOT, I have loved traveling around the state of Kentucky and exploring new counties, and especially being with all of my friends, my crew members, just going out and just driving on the open country roads with the windows down and music blasting. It's no other great feeling.
All those things have been great, and obviously for me, the top of the list of my fondest memory is meeting my husband. It's I like to joke with him and tease him, but he really is. I mean, I feel like I got the crown of MapDOT, I guess. Got the very best thing I could get out of it.
Cory Ramsey of MapDOT Kentucky will be speaking at the Warren County Public Library later today.
MapDOT Kentucky is the travels of me and my crew. There's 5 of us in total, my wife and another 4, and we've traveled all over the state. And so tonight I'll be highlighting these in a speech at the Warren County Public Library, the Bob Kirby branch.
While I was in Bowling Green, Cory and the MapDOT crew were giving a speech at the Warren County Public Library. Cory spoke on who MapDOT is and what they do, and why it is important for people to get out and see these little MapDOTs in Kentucky before they are all gone.
Ken, the MapDOT, for those of you new to the MapDOT Kentucky crew, what we did was we decided to plop one of these out. Y'all, it's been a while since we've seen one of these, haven't it? Now, this is the old folding map. You could still get these at travel centers, but you get them at gas stations. Y'all remember that? I got some of the house, Gulf, Chevron, Texaco, AAA, and we would plop out this folding map and we would look for where the dots were that we'd not been to yet. Now, we've all traveled parkways, we've all traveled interstates, but how many of us delve off to the Monkey's Eyebrow and the Possum Trots and the Oscars and the different places that are the podunk spots, and there's actually a podunk, Kentucky, the podunk spots of Kentucky. And so what we began to do was say, hey, is there anything in these places? Is it worth seeing? Is it worth taking a picture of? And we found out that it absolutely was. And so we called ourselves MapDOT Kentucky because we wanted to go to every single MapDOT. How many counties have we got here in Kentucky? Why do we have that many? Everybody has a hometown, and everybody has that special place. Even if they didn't grow up there, they know that grandmama, granddaddy grew up there. They know that there's a history and a place. There's songs about it. Over the river and through the woods to grandmother's house we go. There's a heritage there. Even if we grow up in a city, a bustling metropolis, there's still something mystical about the back road. There's still something mystical about that podunk, middle of the road place. What are the people like? Are they backwards? Are they okay? Are they like me? Are they different? Is there culture there? What is that culture like? What's the music there like? What's the belief system there like? What's the religion there like? And all of those things encompass this mystique with something that is off the beaten path. And we go to those places and we highlight those off the beaten path places to kind of shine a light on those spots and say, well, here's what's here. We've been there, and we're highlighting it for you to see and possibly go and experience as well. Well, good old Fulton County and this courthouse built in 1903 is still rolling strong, the clock ticking on every hour. I remember as a little kid we used to go up here with a clockmaker downtown, and we'd climb up a bunch of spiral stairs up to the staircase, and when we got up there we'd wind up this Seth Thomas clock, one of just a few big ones still left in courthouses. And legend here in Fulton County, justice and business still in a 1903 courthouse. That is why we're traveling Kentucky right now, because already since we've been doing this in 2013, we've seen buildings burn, we've seen buildings torn down, we've seen Greasy Spoons disappear and a Dollar General come up in the same place, we've seen parking lots appear where there was something that we traveled to and took a picture just a few years ago. It's already happening. We've got to capture it while we can. Brownsville, you see this wood structure up here downtown. Y'all remember the news about maybe a year or two ago, that was the oldest structure downtown and it burned to the ground. Not too long after I'd taken that picture. Our places are disappearing right in front of us. Bowling Green, for example, that's gone. Well, when you talk about river towns, not just river towns, but small towns, everybody came from somewhere. I came from this place, and it's the memories and the times and the occasions, and I take those with me across Kentucky. And so when I pull up to a small town, I understand exactly what those folks are feeling, what their memories are, what their recollections are, what their passions are, and knowing that, hey, sometimes we got to be the squeaky wheel to get a little bit of grease, because the bigger places get all the attention. It's about time places like Hickman, it's about time places with a map dot of a name get a little bit of exposure, and that's what I'm doing now. Now at Hickman, and there wasn't a year went by that the 4th of July wasn't centered around Hickman Harbor. If you didn't have a boat or didn't go skiing or anything like that, you did come down to the harbor for the 4th, because they had fireworks out on a barge that would sit out there in this harbor. Right now they're dredging it, obviously, with a dredge out there, but there was a barge that would be out there, and they'd have some volunteers and folks that shot off fireworks, and this whole spot up and down through here was nothing but lawn chairs and beach towels. And that's before you had the fold-out chairs. You had the regular old aluminum chairs, and people had skeeter dope on and were slapping themselves the whole time with big old mosquitoes lighting on them. But it was coming out here watching fireworks. Me and Granddaddy, we used to go fishing out on a ramp over here, and we'd be casting for some crappie or anything it would bite, really, but most of the time some striped bass would bite. But we had a lot of memories out here at this very spot, and every time I come back to Hickman, I'm making a round around the harbor.
One of the things I learned very quickly while documenting Cory was his tremendous love of these small towns, the people that call them home, and the hope that others will also try to keep these places alive. I felt that Cory thought if he wasn't doing this, then nobody would. He literally feels if these areas, people, and towns are not documented, they might disappear forever in the fast-paced, technology-driven world we live in today.
I went to Morganfield, and I sat down at a place there, and I was having a cup of coffee, and I talked to the lady there in Morganfield, and I said, I want to go up to Uniontown, which was 5 miles up the road from Morganfield. She looks at me and says, U-Town? Man, I can't remember the last time I've been to U-Town. I drove up the 5 miles or so to Uniontown there on the banks of the Ohio River. And I'm going to tell you what, folks are still living there. It matters to somebody. Somebody's calling that home. Somebody's raising a family there. Somebody's having a life there. the old Foreign Legion, American Legion cannon there, and just the post office. Not much there, but folks are still calling it home.
As fall settled into the bluegrass state, I began piecing the project together. When arriving at the office one Monday morning, I was very surprised by a message from Cory regarding the future of Map. Kentucky.
Stephen Middleton, this is Cory Ramsey with Map. Kentucky. And we've got another chapter in the Map. Saga we need to put on of kind of wrapping up Map. I think after all these years of being on the road and traveling across Kentucky, I think it's time to kind of pull into the garage and close the garage door and say we've seen every dot.
I decided to find a good central location between Cory's home of Bowling Green and mine in Moorhead. We settled on meeting in Campbellsville at the Commonwealth Curiosity favorite, the last Druthers restaurant in America.
After we plopped out the map and when I started looking at it, I ran out of dots to go and see. And, you know, it always was, let's go visit every single dot, every single county. And then it got to where I'd plop out the map and I'd get to looking at it and there wasn't any more places left to go. Or I'd been there several times. Yeah, you know, there's always a delight in seeing someplace for the first time. And maybe the hardest thing was realizing that you couldn't have that original visit anymore. And so when you go back, it was the second or third time you saw a place, its old hat. Seeing it for the first time, there's excitement. It's like, oh wow, look at this. This place is out in the middle of nowhere. And I want to tell folks about it. And then eventually, it just got to, well, I've seen that before. I think we get that way with a lot of things. And I'd gotten that way with traveling, I guess. And it's kind of a been there and done that, as with anything. And two, maybe it's time for somebody else to come up and do it a little bit different than the way we did it, and to put a little spin on it and say, well, these Map. Folks, they did it this way. Here's a whippersnapper coming up, a millennial, iPhone user, Snapchat and things that I don't even know about, you know, that could do it in a different light and continue to help small town Kentucky. So I don't think small town Kentucky is going to suffer by Map. Not continuing to go out there. I think there's always going to be some interest.
I think it's awesome. I think what he did, you know, they put a lot of time into it, a lot of effort, you know, 120 counties, a lot of miles. And, you know, I think rural Kentucky has got a lot to offer for people that, you know, his promotion of it was a really neat thing. I think it hit home with a lot of people, you know.
Just a thanks to everybody that's been involved and the ways that they've helped us with both the media attention and inviting us into their places of business over the years. And you know, that's a long list. That's a long list. It's never going to be just here's what Cory Ramsey did. It's here's what other people allowed Cory Ramsey to have a chance to do and his crew. To come in and hang out with them, and that dates back years. That goes back 2009. That goes back to relationships I formed in the media going all the way back to year 2000, 1999. So you're talking, you know, 17 years of folks helping out and calling on those folks and saying, here's what I'm up to now, and they really stepped up and said, yeah, we'll feature you on our radio station or our TV station and a newspaper, and that's really what got the word out about Map. Was through the traditional media and all the folks up in Frankfort who got behind it and said, yeah, we'll plug you on our official tourism pages. You know, that was a big help, and they're always rooting us on. And I think that most folks would just want us to keep doing this for forever and ever, but. So grateful for the chance that they gave us to do that sort of stuff.
Cory Ramsey is without a doubt one of the most interesting Kentuckians I have ever had the opportunity to meet. Before I met Cory, when I myself was documenting areas of Kentucky I felt needed to be noticed, I would visit Map. Kentucky's social media sites to see where Cory would detail next. I always knew Cory had the foresight to seek out places that had an amazing story to tell. After meeting and working with Cory, I always noticed a confidence in his voice when describing a place he had visited and recorded with Map. Cory's confidence can only come to a person who has nothing but unadulterated passion in traveling Kentucky from corner to corner. A person who has spent his own money, time, sweat, and tears to show all of us what our entire beautiful state has to offer. From Hickman, Bowling Green, Monkey's Eyebrow, Rabbit Hash, Pikeville, and back, Cory can easily give you a rundown of the state's best burgers, ice cream cones, scenic views, stretch of river, and the last artisans in the state. It is amazing to think that one person took this upon himself. That someone was Cory Ramsey, who had thought that, hey, my town matters too. My dot on the map matters not only to me, but everyone who lives here. The thought that Kentucky is a state with 120 counties, but really I only know about where I live in the state's major attractions. What else is out there? Let's go find out. People like Cory are not made every day. A person with this much passion only comes along once in a lifetime. A person who did all of this in hopes that people maybe, just maybe, pay attention to an area that they never knew about. So here is to Cory Ramsey and Map. Kentucky. As of the finish of this film, Cory and crew are now officially retired from documenting the Commonwealth, in hopes that a new generation will take up the mantle and keep the memories alive, and not just the big dots, but every small dot in between. So a call goes out to you, Kentucky. Let's make sure we take the lead from Cory Ramsey and Map. To all do our part to make sure people know something about each of our 120 counties, and how every county has something to offer to our great Commonwealth. Let's all remember the sacrifices and joys that Cory and crew laid down to all of us to know what a Map. Is and why we live in the best state in the USA.